Backwards. Here we are back again. Now it says we're live one more time. It cut me off.
Well, I didn't do it.
No, you didn't. All right, so rookie error. There it is. It's on now. Thanks to the technological oversight of Robin. Apparently, I went on and came off or something. So we're going to start this thing all over again. We're gonna go past the whole introduction thing and go straight into a video for you guys. So let's start this thing over again. Okay, now back to it. Now that we're actually on. Gee, many Christmas. Typical rookie error, guys. Sorry about that. And getting quite excited because we have a monster topic in golf shafts. Okay. And what we saw here, let's go over the video real quick. 5 days of golf, and it was Kiva Dunes, Peninsula, both craft farms, and the Country Club of Gulf Shores. All very good golf. Pro tip, your rangefinder does not work in fog. I was rangefinderless for the first 2 days. So we went old school. Go find the yardage marker and pace it off and throw it at the hole, and that's what had happened. So not too bad at all. Good time to be had by all. Also, let's congratulate Scotty Scheffler on his commanding win at Arnold's golf tournament. That was a good thing. And we're getting ready to go. I would show you what we did last week, but what you saw in the video was exactly what we did last week. So there we go. It just means more time to talk about this. So what I've got coming up is he is the man, the myth, the legend of Acra golf shafts. Acra golf shafts, for me, has been a supplier to custom club makers for a long time. And the quality has been nothing short of dead on spot. And the guys have been phenomenal to work with. And if they weren't, they wouldn't be on the back of my wall here. And as you see, from all the way from here and all the way to there, and then all the way here and all the way behind me coming over here, that's all them. Now they do more, and we'll cover that in a little bit later. But just to say that it's worthwhile endeavor. So those of you that are looking to do something like this, or we're going to take it a little more serious, these guys are somebody you want to talk to. So here we go, Mr. Gavin Robertson. Let's bring him on. There he is.
Hi, Jim. Pleasure to be on.
Now you're muted on me somewhere along the lines.
Uh-oh. My mic seems to be working.
I heard you before. We were talking earlier. Now all of a sudden I don't hear him.
My mic is on.
Oh, now you're muted.
Yeah.
Now you're not.
Command D. Can you hear me now?
Need Robin to come in here and see if you can hear him. Yeah. Okay, so let me do this then.
At least it's not me.
Let's see if this works out.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you know what it is. Let's do this.
I enjoyed the man, the myth, the legend intro, by the way.
The settings are really, really different when you have, yes, when you have bring on a guest. So it's, and I normally don't do this. Yeah. So Gavin, let's tell the group who you are and what you represent. It's getting it straight out of the box.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Well, it's a pleasure to be on your broadcast, Jim. We normally do something like this at the PGA show. We missed this year, but it's always a pleasure talking to you about golf shafts, and it's great to have a chance to talk to your followers and kind of talk a little bit about what we do. So yeah, I myself and my partner Dave Macarucha started Acra well more than 20 years ago. And then I guess 5 years ago, well, I guess starting from scratch from the beginning, we always believed that club fitting was a growing segment of the golf market, and so therefore, since day one, we've keyed on professional club fitters as our customer base. We've designed all of our shafts based on what we consider to be the needs of club fitters, and listen to club fitters whenever it comes to designing shafts. Try to fulfill kind of the gaps in the market that are out there. Many of our shafts over the years were designed based on feedback we got from you, Jim, and other professional club fitters. And 5 years ago, well, actually about 8 years ago, we partnered up with True Temper to work with them to grow their aftermarket club fitting business. And then just under 5 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, True Temper actually acquired Acra. And I stayed on as a director of aftermarket sales, club fitting specifically. And we acquired Aerotech, which a lot of your followers will be aware of, that steel fiber. And now basically our facility here handles the aftermarket for True Temper across the board. That includes, True Temper product, Project X product, Aerotech, and Acra. And we still fulfill the needs of club fitters worldwide, really.
So tell them where here is, because it's really kind of an international vibe going on with this.
Yeah, we're a couple hours east of Toronto in Canada, which is kind of unique that we supply the world with steel and graphite shafts, the most popular ones from our facility here. All of our steel shafts are made in the U.S., and we just opened up a new facility in Tijuana, which is really close to our sort of golf facility down in San Diego. So our graphite shafts are, most of our graphite shafts are now made down there, and we're slowly moving everything there. So everything's kind of in North America now. We're getting close to that. Acra still has some shafts made in Japan and overseas, but yeah. So, but we're up here in Canada, and not quite the weather you got on your vacation there.
No, no. The first couple of days were totally foggy, and we were. And we're, you go to shoot the distance, and they say, "What you get?" And I got 7 yards.
7 yards. I've had that happen to me.
And it was like, well, I guess we're not using this today.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way myself.
Yeah, so it was funny. So the golf story for Kiva, it's our first round, and we're at the condo the night before. I get a phone call from them, and they said, "Hey, you're a twosome with a twosome behind you. Do you mind pairing up with the twosome behind you?" I'm like, "No, I'm okay with that. We're all good." And so we get there, and it's all good. They're real friendly. And I'm like, well, I mean, why? Normally you don't get a phone call for something like this unless something's going on. Well, it turns out the owner of the Kiva golf course was flying down 28 of his closest friends, and they were looking for an opening, and they had to move some this way and they had to move some that way, or get all 28 of the guys onto the golf course. And the funny part, even the worst part about it is, I actually ran into the guy, and and he, had his own car down there, obviously, because he has the property down there. And he was talking about breaking a shaft in a driving iron. And I'm like, really? And so I started talking to him. He looked like anybody. He looked like any other guy, any other place, any other time. And wild white hair and just going everywhere. And, and I started. He goes, well, the thing probably made in Korea. And I said, well, you're probably not too far off in a lot of cases. Knowing where these things are made. And he says, yeah. I said, hey, if you find out you want something, just give me a holler, man. And he kind of looked at me real funny. And I was like, right here, bud, right here. And he goes, oh, okay. So, but he's a good guy. He's a good, for a 5-minute conversation, it was pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. All righty. So it turns out where Gavin's at's only I think it's only 6 hours from our house. So, and we've been able to visit at least once. That was a neat little trip up there. Got to get on the boat, the little dinner cruise that they have over there. That was really cool.
Oh, did you do that?
Yeah.
Thousand Islands Cruise Line. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a really nice trip. It was packed, but it was a nice trip. So
very good.
That was really cool. So, all righty, man. So let's talk about, before we get into the specifics, let's talk about Acra's lineup, because the depth of Acra's lineup might be surprising to a lot of people. And that's and we get lost in a lot of that, right? Because all we know is names, right? You'll hear all the other shaft manufacturers, they have these names that they just stay with. And we forget about the depth and the width of a lot of these programs that these companies have, particularly yours, because of the number one is we called it what everybody would use, then the better, and then the really tailored up player. And a lot of people probably don't understand how much play you are getting on the tour, or even on the professional tours, as a matter of fact. And so let's talk about a couple of those lines, and then so that folks know what's going on.
Sure. I mean, we tend to do a good, better, best philosophy across the board when it comes to sort of wood shafts, to give different price points and different options. And I guess I'll start our iWood line, we call it. It's been around for a while. We tend to have a 3-year life cycle on our products, because everything we do, like I was saying earlier on, is sort of designed for club fitters. And with club fitters, it's nice to get comfortable with a particular profile or a type of shaft. So we try not to change every year, and therefore with a 3-year life cycle and generally 3 different brands within the Acra line, it allows us every year to sort of update one line. But you'll find, and like going back also to what I was saying before, when we design shafts, we tend to look at that we're creating the canvas to allow the club fitter to be able to paint the picture. So we want to give you lots of different profiles. So all of our shafts have sort of a unique profile to them, or even multiple profiles within a line of shafts, which we'll probably talk about. But the iWood line is more your price point line. It's designed for the average golfer. It tends to have a stiffer butt section with a weave in the butt section and a very active tip to help get the ball in the air. It's a full line, drivers, fairways, and hybrids, to really kind of appeal to all golf, every part of your bag that comes to woods and hybrids.
Now let me stop you right there for just a second. That's one of the biggest reasons why Acra is so good, guys, is because, did you hear what he said? Drivers, fairways, and hybrids. Mm-hmm. All right. There may be only 2 golf shaft companies in the planet that do that. All right. That will do that to match that up. Not only does it make my job easier when we talk about going through that, hey, I got fairway woods. What's a good one? Well, that's pretty easy. I can just go right here because of one of the technologies of dynamic matching in order to make that go, and then go right into the hybrid. And that way you get the same feel. And kid yourself not, these are not the same profiles. In fact, they're pretty different. And in order to attack the size of the head and the weights that come with those particular heads. And not only does he do it in this line, but he does it in the other lines, which is just, it's staggering why more people don't do it like this, for the whole idea, game score goes low, right? And it's crazy why we why the other companies don't want to follow in this footstep, because 10 gram heavier, cut an inch off, does not work. All right, does not work. And I've been there, done it. All right, and it doesn't work. And I mean, and if you've been doing it long enough, you get the, well, I can't hit my 3-wood. Well, yeah, okay. This is why. And we get into it. So I had to jump in there from a club fitter point, because to me, that's absolutely crucial to getting the right stuff in the players' bags across the board, right? Not just one big stick and then everything else is, half-ass. And we want it all to be the same, and that's the reason why we do that. All right, start step on your thunder a little bit.
No, you just did an amazing job explaining die match. Die match is a technology that we developed a while ago now. It was all done with cameras, and it's pretty cool. The idea is we really measured how much a shaft or a club twists on impact, and we created literally our driver shafts and dedicated fairway shafts and dedicated hybrid shafts are a different profile to basically give you the best performance out of different types of heads. So you did a great job explaining that. But I mean, short form, the next line, the GX line, is our brand new line. We're probably going to talk about this. That's kind of the juggernaut of our here you go, of our line. It basically is 3 different profiles designed for 3 different types of golfers, has tons of technology based in it. You'll see there's 3 different colors that Jim's got there. There you go. That's a green one, which is the middle launch. The blue was the higher launch, and then he's got a red one there that's a lower launch.
This red is actually quite cool.
Jim's one of the first people to have them, actually. Just starting to ship those out now, Jim. That's cool. You have them.
I tell you what, the paint job on these things is cool. I see you brought back the old, I call it like a digital pattern back in the butt section. And the part I really like about this is whether you got the Acra logo with its being very bold and white, or for those people that are logo sensitive, you got that. And that really played. You'd be surprised how many people are like, yeah, no, I don't like that. And so you go from something like that to something like that, and all of a sudden folks are happy. And that's the cool part about it. And the weights, right? Good God, how many weights do you have, Gavin?
There's a lot of SKUs in there. The blue goes from 40 up to, actually we actually have now a tour version. You're going to see these that we really haven't had this line of shafts out on tour in a number of years, but we actually now have an M5, which is our X Flex, in every category now. So the blue version, we actually have a 60 and 70 grams. It starts at 40 grams. It goes 10 gram increments. And we have an M5 version of the blue, which is a higher launch tour shaft, really. And then the green starts at 50 grams. It goes up to 70. And the red, which is more the tour profile shaft, starts at 60 and 70 grams, basically. But there's a lot of weights, a lot of different options in there, a lot of flexes in each one of those too.
I think I got either 18 or 20.
Yeah. You're a pretty good selection
covering the gambit, brother. Not only that, but you got the SRTs. Don't forget those.
Yeah, and part of the GX line is and it also kind of matches into our iron shafts too, is the SRT, which is a junior line of shafts. And the idea is it bridges that gap from the junior that has that junior set of clubs and is looking to get their first sort of adult type clubs, but needs something in a lighter weight, little softer flex, but still stability. So I'll call it a premium junior shaft, but at a great price for juniors to be able to, afford to be able to get into.
Yep. I call it the tweener shaft, where they're just between the real junior and the adult. Mm-hmm. And that's that 12 to 14-year-old that's got athletic ability to bring the club around. Just the muscles probably haven't developed enough. And this thing is pretty, it works well for that category. And the folks that are in that category that are looking for that fitting and that kind of stuff, they're bringing me Ping heads and Callaway heads and things like that, as opposed to the US Kids and all the other ones that are out there, because they're developing that swing speed. They just need that weight.
Mhm.
And when you get, you can get lower weights in that blue, but then they're wobbly.
Yeah.
And you get the other ones that, like in these SRTs, and they can take a kid that can really tug down on it and pull it through, but it's still light. And so it's a good shaft. And in fact, I did a 14-year-old, and I got him hitting he's 14 years old, and I had him hitting a 7-iron out to like 165.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. He's just built like a golfer, and I'm like, oh my god. But he still needed a little bit of time to mature, and that shaft just absolutely won with him. So that was a good thing.
Cool. I mean, next up, let's just keep it real quick. The TZ line. A lot of people have heard that. That's probably what is our most used shaft on professional tours. Wyndham Clark won the U.S. Open with it last year. TZ is we have a TZ5 and TZ6. TZ5 being our stout, lower launching, pretty low spinning shaft for the guy, the player with the quick transfer. A faster swing. And then the TZ6 is kind of our unique shaft that is a very responsive tip. It's super low torque. We had guys like Jason Day and Cameron Champ using it, some big hitters. And I mean, it's crazy to see some of these real bombers using a shaft that really the tip flex is probably closer to a senior or regular senior flex, but low torque makes it feel tight, and it's got a real stiff butt section. And we have lots of tour use of that shaft too, but it gives you two unique designs. And we added the ST this year, which is kind of a tweener shaft between the two. And we just introduced a counterbalance version of it too. And that's kind of generally our premium full line of shafts that we've had for a number of years. And it's been super popular. And then this year we're also offering a new kind of we've always had a boutique line, I call it, I'll say we alternate different profiles at sort of random years and stuff. And this year we're introducing a really cool new line called Shogun, which we really haven't talked about a whole lot yet. You're probably the first person I've talked to about it at all. And it's a line from our factory in Japan. Makes sense because it's called Shogun, and basically it's 3 different profiles again. And it's going to be a really cool introduction, probably later this spring. And again, a super premium line of shafts from Acra.
I got to see so Jeff,
Mm-hmm.
when we were talking about it, got to show a couple while I was talking with you guys when you were giving the presentation.
Yep.
And of course, the way that this thing works is super important, but for the rest of us, how cool it looks while it's in the bag or on the golf course is also another plus. This thing's got game in the cool factor, so it does pretty good. And with the Japanese make, I think it's gonna, I've not seen it other than on a picture. I've not hit it, obviously, but I got this feeling that it's going to be one of these soft control type shafts where it feels really, really good, but then all of a sudden you're like, well, that was kind of offline. Nope, no, it wasn't. There it goes. And it's going to be one of those kinds of shafts. So
yeah, it's kind of unique. So we maybe we'll talk about this later, but so our FX line, which is the was become now GX, took off on the World Long Drive circuit. And the crazy thing is, unbeknownst to me, and kind of something I learned because we have a guy named Kenny Hamilton that works for us here, who's an ex Long Drive guy, knows a lot of those guys. Somehow we started realizing that Long Drive competitors are using soft light shafts now. I know them as XXX long, super stiff shafts in the past. Well, now they're using super light stuff. And so we started trying getting these guys to try we call it our sumo shaft, which is a 140 M0 shaft, which is basically a double L flex 40-gram shaft designed for Mrs. Haverkamp to get the ball in the air.
yeah.
And all of a sudden we've had about 6 of the top 10 long drive guys using that shaft. So the reason I'm saying that is we took that technology and we sort of looked at it, and the new Shogun shaft actually has a shaft designed for that type of golfer. We are now seeing I guess when people come in and get fit these days, they have to have an open mind. And I think club fitters have an open mind that just because you swing hard or a certain speed, you shouldn't necessarily use a certain flex of shaft, and something maybe we can talk about. And nowadays, the idea of using a softer shaft, even though you have a specific speed, is not a bad thing. And so in our Shogun line, we actually have I'll call it a double L flex. We also have a senior flex, but we don't really put the flex on it. And the idea is it's a shaft that's more stable than that 140 M0 we have in the GX line, but it's designed for that I'll say slightly stronger golfer that wants to try to even get more speed and try something a little softer. And then the Shogun line also has two other lines, a green and a red, that is more for the tour player or somebody that wants a more traditional shaft. But we really sort of jumped in with the Shogun with that sort of that shaft for that player that wants to get more speed, no matter what speed they already currently have, if that makes sense.
Oh, and it's going to be fun when that thing shows up, because I can see it happening. Because I've just, for me personally, since getting older, I still pull down hard, but I don't swing as fast.
Yep.
And the pull down hard and swing and not swing as fast sounds like it's going to fit into this thing pretty decent. So it's going to be fun to try out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see.
Yeah. So now it's always cool, and it's always, easy to talk about driver shafts because that's the big giant ego club in the room. But you guys service way more than that, right? We got iron shafts, and we got a long line of those things. What are we carrying with that?
So iron shafts, we're talking Acra Graphite. Our I series iron shaft has been around again for a long time. We update every 3 to 5 years, I'd say. Generally, the I series starts at again sort of your 40 gram up to 80 grams, designed really to create. It's for the average golfer or the I guess the biggest variety of golfers, designed to kick the ball up with some spin. Give you some control. It's got fairly low torque for graphite, but designed for sort of the mainstream type of golfer. Then we have the TZI, which is more of that player's profile. So it's got more of a softer but stiffer tip section, more like a dynamic gold, quite honestly. And it sort of starts at 75 grams and goes up to 115 grams with 10 gram increments. And it's designed for, I'll say, some a little faster transition again. But when you get into the 75 gram, it's more of that R flex. So it's just somebody who wants a little bit more control in their iron shafts. So we do have sort of different shafts for different types of players to give you more opportunity to be able to fit somebody into a different Acra shaft. And then from there, we also have, within all those families of wood shafts, we also do have driving iron shafts and hybrid shafts in there. So there's a lot of choices out there for you. And we also have a line of wedge shafts in there, graphite wedge shafts, which is pretty cool.
Oh, and I like those. Those are setting off picture way over here. You can't see them in the different weights, because it's very cool, because I like them to be just a touch heavier than the iron shaft. I know that might not be just exactly where the popularity is going, but just a slight touch heavier, so that when you put that wedge head in there, because you're not going to be because it's a finesse club, right? Yep. And you want to be able to find it when you're swinging, and man, that thing works. It really does. It just works.
Well, if you look at 90% of the PGA Tour is using S400 Dynamic Gold S400 wedge shafts, even though they're using X100 iron shafts. The unique thing about that is the S400 happens to be a couple grams heavier than the X1. So if you take that philosophy, it's a flex softer, but it's a little bit heavier. And tour players seem to think that's a really good combination for a wedge shaft. That's kind of what we did with the Acra wedge shafts. We made them a little bit heavier and a little bit softer in the tip to give you that same feeling when you match it up to an iron shaft, so your set of iron shafts. So it's a cool philosophy, and I think everybody should be looking at that kind of profile when you're looking at wedge shafts.
And then, not to be outdone, you've jumped into a whole nother genre of shafts, which I don't think has gotten nearly enough. I'm going to get a couple out of here. Has gotten nearly enough attention in the idea of shafts going into putters.
Ah, yes.
Going in, we're
So
going. Go ahead.
what do you got there? The FX. Okay, so the FXP is a
Yes.
line of putter shafts we introduced a while ago now. Now, I mean, putter shafts have finally kind of taken off and gotten trendy.
Yes, they have.
We were a little ahead of the game on that one, but the idea with that, which is really cool, is we measured all the steel putter shafts that all the major companies are using. So whether it be a Scotty Cameron, an Odyssey, or you name it, and we measured them on our S3 machine, which kind of profiles golf shafts, and we looked at them. They also the tip deflection, so the amount it actually flexes in the tip of all those shafts used in all the popular putters all fell into a small category kind of thing. And so with those shafts there, we designed one that was basically it's 128 grams, which is your standard putter shaft weight. It's your standard sort of flex of a putter shaft. But what we did is we made the tip deflection on the 200 a little bit softer than all the popular steel shafts out there. And we made the 300 series a little bit stiffer. And then we made a 100 series that was way softer, and a 400 series is way stiffer.
Yep.
The yellow and green one there. And the cool thing about it really gives you a fitting system with putter shafts. So everything else stays the same. We've sort of isolated just the tip deflection as different. So if you're a putter that has a smooth stroke, like a Ben Crenshaw kind of thing, you're probably going to like the softer tip deflection. If you're more of a Snedeker or somebody who has more of a popping stroke, then you're probably going to like the stiffer one. But we find out the stiffer ones tend to get the ball rolling faster. And we also have another putter shaft line we introduced last year called the Sync, and it's got like a 1 degree torque on it. So we have a whole lot different line, a bunch of lines, and that the Sync putter shaft comes in basically an 85 gram and also 135 grams. So it gives you a real lightweight putter shaft too. So we're all in on putter shafts.
Well,
Aerotech also has a line of putter shafts that we also promote, which is pretty cool. So we got a whole bunch of different putter shafts out there.
and the low torque, like you said, getting trendy. The low torque has been the real trendy kind of stuff for here as of late.
Yeah.
And with the putter heads getting just so big, it and heavier that it's become a thing. And I've seen it in action. I've watched it on the Capto, and you can watch the thing just.
Oh yeah.
And the feel. I mean, it almost becomes visual. I took 2 profiles. I have a Makefield putter, and I took their standard putter shaft and put it in there, and I put a low torque shaft in it, and you don't really notice it until you try the other one. That's the real key. Until you try the other one.
That's what I say. Yeah.
And then when you try it, the original one feels like a fish flopping out of water, and you're like, "Good night! How did I ever make a putt with that thing?" And just crazy. And now we've done it. I've got a lab putter, and it's got your Acra shaft in it.
Yep.
The proprietary that I tried to steal one from Jeff, and he wouldn't let me. And that thing's a winner, man. I mean, it does the job, and I really, really like it.
What Lab really wanted, basically the Lab putter shaft it started with our FXP 400. They want something really, really, really stable, low torque. And we took the FXP 400 that you have there and extended it a little bit and changed a little bit of the profile for them because they had a few things they kind of were looking for. But generally they wanted a really stiff and very, very stable. And we were able to provide that for them, and they've had an incredible success story, that lab putter in general.
Oh my God, that it really has. They've come from obscurity to almost mainstream. They're almost there.
Well, it's been pretty exciting for us to be along for the ride with them. They're great folks over there, and it's been really great dealing with them.
Cool. Last bit before we get on to the other topics.
Sure.
Now, Graphite is not your only offerings, right?
Nope. We developed a line of steel shafts in the Acra brand. I guess about 4 years when we were acquired by True Temper. There was kind of a little I guess design that I had for a number of years prior to that kind of been keeping in my back pocket, I guess you could call it, and went to the engineers at True Temper and said, "Hey, can you make this?" and they thought it was pretty cool because True Temper are experts at a stepless shaft like Project X and a step shaft like Dynamic Gold. And the idea of this shaft was kind of a combination. So basically, we took a Dynamic Gold butt section and a Project X tip section, I guess you could call it, and created a line of shafts out of it. And it's been actually our most popular shaft we have in the club fitter world. And it's been a huge success for us. And there's two lines. There's the green version, which is more the mid-launch type shaft, and it's available in 3 different weights. And then we have the red version, which we introduced, I guess, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's more the player's line, a little bit stronger, a little bit more stable, designed to lower the flight down a little bit. So they're both incredibly successful for us.
Very, very, very cool. Yeah. So guys, if you're looking at it, when I say, hey, Acra does when we talk about, hey, what shaft, and I'm normally saying, well, Acra this or Acra that, that's why, right there. All right, and you're seeing it. Now, I will say, just to be fair here, the only shaft I'm not carrying at this particular point is the iron or the steel, and everything else is in this bank right back here. And so maybe one day I'll get convinced and I'll get it, because just like Gavin was saying, it takes old guys a little bit while to get used to products and things like that, and that would be me in a nutshell. It's not that it's bad. It's just that I'm ornery. So that's what it is. All righty. So let's ask some questions, Gavin. So
sure.
Let's do some basics. So how do we go about making a golf shaft? I mean, let's start with some basics, because a lot of folks, you'd be surprised, a lot of folks don't understand how a graphite golf shaft gets made.
Yeah. So, I mean, really simply, if you imagine sheets of graphite, which are almost like a material, a little bit, I'll say, stiffer than the clothing you're wearing, but not much. And it's a woven material of graphite. We get it in sheets called pre-preg. You can get pre-preg in different strengths. You can also get pre-preg that's a weave where you have multiple strengths or modulus of graphite mixed in. And what we do is we cut these sheets into, if you imagine, little rectangles that you would wrap around a mandrel. So it starts off with a steel mandrel that's the shape of the inside of your shaft. So if you look at a shaft, I guess I got one here. Here you go. Here's the Shogun for you haven't seen. But if you look at the inside of a shaft, you've got one there. There's a hole in there, and the mandrel would be, there you go. There would be a steel rod that would fit that mandrel. Obviously it tapers, so it's much bigger in the butt section and much smaller in the tip section. So we have computers that will cut rectangular sections or pieces of graphite that are obviously cut not exactly square like a rectangle. They have to be tapered. So when they wrap around the mandrel, they match up identically. And what we basically do is wrap these flags, we call them, of graphite around this mandrel in multiple layers, but also staggered at different amounts. So you don't have the term a seam or something like that in a shaft doesn't really exist, because we're starting the wrapping at different, we call clocking, where we start at 12 o'clock, the next wrap goes on at 1 o'clock, next wrap goes on at 2 o'clock. But they're also staggered because each of these flags might be anywhere from 12 to 18 inches long. So if a shaft is 46 inches, you're going to have these flags staggered throughout the shaft in all different sections. And these flags of pre-preg have resin, which is like glue, on both sides of it. So what's happening is we're wrapping these shafts around a mandrel, multiple layers, to create a specific profile of shaft. How we cut these flags from the graphite, so which direction the graphite runs, whether it's at 45 degrees or 90 degrees, makes a huge difference of whether the shaft bends this way or it's torsionally strong. So there's all different things we can do to create a shaft that either has a stiff butt section and a soft tip section, or a stiff tip section and a soft butt section, or everything in between. And we create that by using different materials in different sections of the shaft, or wrapping it in a different direction. So there's a whole bunch of things we can do to create different profiles. And that's when we look at a shaft, we look at the butt section, the midsection, the tip section, and we say, what do we want to create here? Do we want to create something that is a stiffer tip section, a softer butt, or vice versa? And how we wrap the graphite around these mandrels creates that profile. And same with the torque. So once we wrap all these layers of graphite around a mandrel, we then put the unfinished shaft in an oven. It bakes for a little bit, and that's when the resin it creates an adhesion between the different layers of graphite, and that's when you end up with a basically a shaft that you can't even tell there's layers of graphite in there. Now, the more expensive the graphite we use, the less and the stronger the resin is. So you don't get what we're always trying to do nowadays with our higher quality shafts is increase the graphite to resin ratio within the shaft. We're trying to have one of the biggest differences you notice between a less expensive shaft and a more expensive shaft is a more expensive shaft will generally have a greater graphite to resin ratio, which means you have more graphite, less resin, which means you have less consistency issues. So if you have a shaft, and you've probably measured shafts where when you turn it, you get a frequency that changes a half a flex just by turning a little bit. That's usually inconsistency within the shaft, and that's usually caused by more resin in the shaft. Or if you find a spine in a shaft, it's usually not really a spine, it's more of a hard side, and that's more resin in one side. That's inconsistencies within a shaft. So we get rid of that by using better quality materials, better quality pre-preg, and therefore you have less resin, and therefore you have a better tolerances, tighter tolerances. Hope that made all sense.
Yeah. So literally what we're talking about is the quality of the graphite actually does make a difference. You know, you always saw
Yes.
that was it T1000s and all that other stuff that you
Yep.
always, there's keywords and tricky phrases that the marketing guys threw out there, but there was what T1000s, T800s, T700s, whatever.
Yep.
And that all was relegated to, we were talking about modulus and the way that would break in order to, and the higher that it got, the higher that number went. And the lower, obviously, to keep costs down for whatever reason, they would go the other way. And and do they come from different areas? I'd never ever figured that one out.
There are several pre-plug suppliers around the world. I mean, most of our materials come from Toray in Japan. Toray supplies the aerospace industry. In fact, when they were making a whack of 787s back in the, I'd say around 2005, 2007, there was a real shortage on graphite because Boeing's the Dreamliners are all made of graphite, and that's where we get a lot of our graphite from. But you gotta be careful when you say, so you hear 40 ton, 50 ton, 60 ton, 80 ton materials and stuff like that. A shaft is generally not made of one type of graphite, because when you get stronger graphite, it tends to also be more brittle. So we have to use stronger materials to make a 60 gram, a 50 gram shaft that is, X flex. We have to use some stronger materials, but those materials are also very brittle. So we actually mix in some what we call mid modulus or softer high modulus materials, so you don't have a brittle shaft. There's been some shafts over the years that have had a reputation as breaking a lot, and it's probably because they had a little bit too much of the high modulus materials in there, and didn't mix in some of the mid modulus materials or the weaves. That kind of, some of the weaves are really cool because we can mix some high modulus and some mid modulus materials all in one layer of graphite, and that's what we're playing around with those things all the time. Our new Shogun has we call a 5K weave, the full length of the shaft, which is 5 different materials wrapped into one weave, and it's ultra light material. It's crazy high tech material that we're using, that they use in aerospace, that we get our hands on. We put a layer of that in there that really adds a lot of feel to the shaft, but also tons of strength.
Huh. Well, it's like you were talking about before when we went from the quality. Now we're talking about different profiles,
Yep.
right? So how do we go about our profiling and why?
Well, I think as a fitter, you probably see it more than anybody. Like I said earlier on, we try to create a canvas that you can paint, do the painting or make the painting. And the painting is really fitting a golfer. And every golfer has their swing is a DNA and it's very different. And I wish I could say to you that this swing or this shaft will match this swing, but we've all tried as a shaft manufacturer and golf shaft designers to find that magical, combination that this shaft will always work with this type of golfer. But unfortunately, there is just too many variances in a golf swing. So what we try to do is give you as many different weights, flexes, and also shaft profiles that when you look at that wall behind you, you can find something that will fit any golfer that comes in to get fit. And this is where I think ACCRA is the industry leader in being able to offer these things. Like you said, our GX line alone has multiple flexes in multiple weights in multiple profiles. So our GX line, just to use as an example, the blue line generally has a stiffer butt section and a softer tip section. And the idea is to kick the ball up in the air for most golfers. But then the green shaft, the middle one, is more of that mid flex. So if you look at the distribution of the stiffness of the shaft, it's more of an even flow from butt to tip section. Whereas the blue shaft, the softer tip version, is actually stiffer in the butt, but it kind of dramatically goes down to a softer tip section, even though the overall flex is softer. And then the green shaft is the red shaft is the opposite. It's actually a softer butt section and a much stiffer tip section, which generally will create a lower ball flight for most players. But you've probably seen it in the past. There are lots of shafts out there, lots of golfers out there that you give them a very stiff tip shaft, which, a lot of people will say is a low flying shaft, and they'll actually hit it straight up in the air because there's no lag in their swing. The shaft doesn't lag at all. So it actually kicks it up high in the air. But you as a fitter can see that. And, if you see somebody that you give them a stiff tip shaft and they kick it way up, well, then you can try something with a softer tip and it'll probably go lower, even though, a lot of people say that's counterproductive, or it's the opposite of what should happen.
Well, that's we're used to just on the opposite end of it, where you had a guy that just absolutely could not close the club face down, and the popular idea is, well, you need a softer tip so you can get that face to do this, and okay, that works every once in a while, but what it really came down to is what they would do is they would go find clubs with a extraordinarily soft butt, and then all of a sudden they're in a super hard tip, and they'd bring the whole club around. Next thing you know, they're hitting bullets.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you just do there? Like, well, it's a different way of looking at things, and that's how you work it. And never once, and the best part about it is you never once see any degradation of distance. It's always you're out there, and it's about going from here to here.
Yeah.
And that's really the idea. You keep it in front of you, your scores are going to go lower regardless.
Yeah. I always say to golfers, so many people say, well, I use a stiff flex shaft or something like that. It's like, that's the least relevant part of what you should know, because there's no standard of what stiff flex is or R flex is. But I mean, what every golfer should know is what profile of shaft works for them best. Once you get fit by, yourself or any professional club fitter, and you find a shaft that really works for you, understand what the profile is of that shaft, whether it's a softer tip section, low torque like our TZ6, something like that. And that way, in the future, when you're looking at shafts, you kind of know what profile works for you. That's way more important to me than ever knowing, that even the CPMs of a shaft, because we were talking earlier on. I mean, our GX line, an M4, whether it's the 100 series, which is the high launch, or the 200 series or the 300 series, they're all totally different profiles. And yet, an M4 is basically the same flex in all of them. And, you got 3 different profiles and they all have the same flex. So, I mean, you should understand the profile more than the flex.
Right. And that we went back in the day, we were talking once before, is that we were measuring the strain on a golf shaft versus the
Yeah.
twine of the golf shaft in order, but what you were doing is you're measuring the strain as you move the item that would strain the shaft up and down the shaft. So you would get these bend patterns that were a much more simplified version of an EI curve.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because guys like me don't need to know what's going on every half of an inch. I mean, let's face it. I mean, but but in the overall scheme of how the shaft is going to work, that's pretty important.
Yeah,
And
strain gauges are great. We used to use that's how we developed that whole die match philosophy. It was all through strain gauges back in the day.
I remember there was always those plans that were floating around there. You could make those things out of wood, and yeah, and they had the little pulleys and the bearings and the whatnot, and
Yeah.
then you would make they had the like the depth micrometers, and they would touch on it, and you would pull it around. And you had to be very careful about how the length of the arms in order to do this. It was quite the setup, and it was very, very good. But if you were a poor woodworker, you got a poor product. And I was like, okay, well, I think Golf Mechanics does a pretty good job at making one. Not all of us can have an S3, so that's pretty good. Well, that's very cool, dude. We got a hell of a lineup, and not only that, that's the Acra line. But you know, as Gavin said, that they're also they've taken over for True Temper, and taken the rest of their lineups as well, in order to help out guys like me. So, one thing, let's throw them a shout out for those guys that want to become club makers and club fitters. Gavin, how they get on board?
Best thing to do is reach out to us. Probably either you can call us at 888-389-3149, but or look us if you go on to truetempersports.com. There's certainly a place you can reach out to us there online. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us. There's certainly a contact us section there, and just say you want to become a club fitter, or you are a club fitter and you want to open up an account. We also have a series of great distributors, GolfWorks and Kent Sports and those kind of guys out there that would be glad to help you out if you need to get some of the True Temper or Project X or Aerotech product. Acra's a little more exclusive, so certainly we sort of have a really wonderful group of certified Acra fitters that we work for. And if you've got some fitters out there that want to become an Acra fitter, just get a hold of us.
And make sure that you tell them I sent you, because apparently there's a kickback in there somewhere, and I'm going to get me a
You
little
got
bit
it.
of that.
You definitely got that.
All right. Well, dude, Gavin, I think that's so. Other than the two guys you made, where are you represented on tour? You got them all now, or is it just the high profile ones?
What do you mean, shafts? No,
Yeah.
you're going to see more and more GX out there this year. We're putting a lot of emphasis on Acra on the DP World Tour. It's kind of a bit of a long story, but and the PGA Tour, you're going to see more and more Acra out there. Like I said, we won the U.S. Open last year, which was pretty good, and got about 10 guys using them now on tour on the PGA Tour. But you're going to see more out there this year for sure.
Cool. So Lee's not out there walking it around trying to get them all involved. You got a rep out there on the DP.
We do actually. Yeah, we got to get rep out there doing. Yeah, it's awesome. We really like Lee. Lee wishes he was on today. By the way, you have to get Lee on for another one of these interviews too. Lee loves talking to you.
No, Lee is a great guy, except for right now he's probably in bed.
Yeah, he is. He is. Lee's
With
our European manager of the aftermarket, and Lee and Jim have a great relationship. And usually at the PGA show, you guys get together for a nice little talk.
Yeah, and Lee's got game too, man. I got to play with him the very first time we ever met, and we called it the international group. We had a guy from South Africa, we had Lee, it was from England, and then me. And man, you want to talk about the conversations that were going on? It was something else. And that fella from South Africa just completely beat our socks off, and he had us by at least 15 years. Just one hell of a ball striker.
Probably Greg Smith.
Yeah, and just good guy, super nice guy. Hey, he showed me a few things. It was the trade-off of the knowledge was just crazy good.
Oh, that's
And,
cool.
and I just saw him the last time that we did this down there. I got to see him again, and we got to talking. And he had brought a protege with him, and I got to talk. And he was in our group. Actually, he was in our group. That young man, dude, that man can hit a golf ball. And I hope to hell that he is actually honing his skills, because he was just absolutely powdering it.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Are you sure you want to be a club fitter, man? You got a lot of game here, you know." But he was creaming it. I don't think he hit anything under 320 the whole day.
That,
It was
that Acra Golf Day, we've been doing it for about 20 years at the PGA show. It's really the largest gathering of club fitters in the world, and we get like about 140 club fitters from all over the world, all in one place at one time. The story you just said it's so cool to hear club fitters getting together and sharing stories and sharing ideas and stuff like that. And we're really proud of being able to sort of put that event on every year and watching you guys get together like that.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I've attended almost. I haven't
Oh,
attended them all, but I've
you
attended quite
had
a
pretty
few of
close,
them.
pretty close.
And it's fun to get, you get a whole different uh, a mingle of these different people, where some older guys like me and some of the younger guys from the more fluent places, and just the ideas that are floating around out there. And it's just really, really cool to see that. I like there one day you put me with all the media guys, and I had a guy from Canada and a guy from the UK, and then a guy from Florida. He did some golf magazine from Florida, and we're all playing. And that was one of the days one of the guys hit a hole in one. Hit a hole in one on that par three, and it was just, and we were like, we didn't even see it go in because the sun was in our eyes, and we thought he hit it over the green. And I walked in there. I said, "Dude, you need to come over here and look at this." He says, "Why?" I said, "Because I think your ball's in this hole." And he goes, "I see you," and it had a logo on it. I said, "You got this logo?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's mine." And we just went crazy. We were like three holes. You couldn't contain us. It was so good.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, it was a good deal. All righty, sir. So we're into hopefully they got it. I got 130 comments here. Are you willing to stay on and answer a handful of these with
For
us?
sure.
All righty, let's go to the top. These are a lot of the guys that we deal with. Let's see. All right, we'll get it. Half of them are normally Robin talking back to him, so we might get away with it. All righty, so we get to Matt. Here we go. Hey guys, shot 3 over on a 9-hole with my wife Sally. Well, that's cool. Acra shaft has been an integral part of growth as the player in my understanding of golf shafts and fitting process. Well, thanks. There you go. So Matt's
Matt,
come
that's great
down.
to hear.
Yeah, Matt has got bit by the club building bug,
Love it.
and we did a 3-series set on teaching the teacher, because he's a teacher by trade, and they brought him down, and he had a set of the old founders clubs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Love those
and
clubs.
he had a bet going with his buddies, so we brought him down here and we turned around and reshafted him, and so I made him do it. So uh, it was fun, right? It was a lot of fun, and so I think he's starting to get a little more serious into it. So maybe we'll see him in there in the family soon.
Awesome.
All right, he says, here we go. Question: will your family of shafts ideal move into the putter shaft world? Yeah, well, I mean, the Gavin and those guys were kind enough to send those putter shafts to me for testing, and the real thing that we got to look forward to uh, is the one thing we got to work on is that guy right there. So with this particular, the only limitation that this putter shaft has is that it has to go into a hosel, and so a lot of clubs being made today have over the hosels going on, particularly in like spiders and Odyssey mallets and that kind of thing. And so we got to figure out a way to make this work in that. Outside of that, this thing, I got to figure, they've got adapters that I can put on there to put in here. And once I got that figured out, the answer to your question, Matt, will be yes. And so I've got to get these adapters figured out and then order to put them on here, because a lot of people have jumped into the putter world. because it's like the easiest place to jump in if you're a manufacturer, right? Making a putter. And Wilson, of all people, it's just crazy. They had it was a very inexpensive putter, and nobody would give it a look because it didn't cost a lot. And now they've upgraded their deal, and they've got a line of putters that 100% milled, very nice metal, the whole 9 yards. And they got a replica, Gavin, of an 8802.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, and the thing is soft as velvet, and it is nutty. But they've got a Fang wannabe, and they got an Anzer wannabe, and they got the weights, and something like that it would be very, very useful on. Mizuno's doing very much in the same vein, except for they do have some mallets with the over the hosel, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it has its limited use, but certainly the low torque stuff has been very, very popular as of late, and certainly Acra would certainly play a place in that one.
Yeah.
All righty, here we go. Here's one for us. It says, I've been told that the firmness of the grip can change the flex or the perceived flex of the golf shaft. Is that true?
Wow. You're more the grip guy than I am right now, but I will say I get a kick out of people that say I want a low torque shaft and then they use a wind grip. So the torque of the shaft can range from, let's say, 2 to 4, 5, 6, maybe, kind of thing, and then you get a wind grip that probably has a torque of about 12 or 13 on it, and they're worried about the torque of the shaft. So I would torque for sure, because if a grip is very soft and it twists a lot, then you will notice a torque difference. Firmness, I'm not too sure about that, other than maybe just feel.
Right.
You can't change the actual flex of the shaft or what the dynamics of what the shaft's doing during a swing, but it certainly can give you probably the shock dampening, which makes it feel soft.
Yeah. So, Jewel, what you're asking when you say perceived flex is probably the most proper term that's being used.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And I've done this testing, and I've got split grips on my bench right now, where I've got a total 100% corded grip. I've got a rubber grip, and I got a wind grip. And each one of those, when you put them on there, give you a different flex rating. However, that is not the measurement of the flex of that shaft. The shaft is what it is naked. Okay. And what you put on there, just like Gavin was saying, has more to do like this than it has to do like that. Okay. And it's feel. It really, what it comes down to is feel. And then if you really, really, really want to go get nerdy with me on this, is that if you get more firmer, typically that means it's heavier. And when it gets heavier, that means there's more weight right here and less weight out there, right? And so the whole complex of the balance of the club changes. So I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole like nobody's business on this one, but in reality, the right answer here is the flex is the flex of the flex. When you put on the grip, it's basically more than a shock absorber, and that's what it becomes, and that's what it is. All right. John Cherry, he's down in Florida, I believe. Good to be here. Thank you.
Hi, John.
Peter, he's in Myrtle Beach. We actually went and saw him. This man's got game, and no rain. However, last week I was able to win. There you go. I saw the trophy. He sent me a picture of the trophy.
Way to go, Peter.
Racking him up. He's going to need a case. We got Michael. I believe he's up in your neck of the woods there, Gavin.
Really?
Yep, and he's got the golf ball glass like we've got.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. Oh, here we go. This is right up your alley, buddy. Is puring a graphite shaft necessary? Is that meant for more of steel shafts?
I will say any type of puring spine lining can never hurt. I'm never anti any of that. I think the best thing I can say is that a pured or spine lining will make a bad shaft better, meaning an inconsistent shaft with not very good tolerances will make it much better. The better the shaft, the less it's going to do, but it can never hurt. So what you're doing is you're finding a hard side. Steel shafts, I can go into a whole analogy on the term spine, even in a steel shaft. By the time a steel shaft it starts as a 1-inch by 1-inch tube and is pulled multiple times to get to whatever length steel shaft you are at, and it's been heated numerous times during that process. Where the spine would have been at one point in time, or the seam, you could never find it, and it's probably the strongest part of the shaft. So anytime you find a spine or a seam or in a shaft, it's a strength thing of that, a portion of the shaft that usually has nothing to do with the actual spine. But spine aligning or puring certainly has its place, and it doesn't hurt at all. You're setting the hardest side of the shaft in a certain direction, which makes a ton of sense to me.
I forgot we always talked about, because I've seen the original one where the original rifle guys would took a roll of flat steel and turn it into a tube.
Yep.
And they had that line, and it had these, what were they, 14-foot rods or 14-foot tubes, and they kept swedging them out.
Yep.
In order to get where they were at. And that process is still today. I still haven't figured that one out. How you can make something stepless on the outside, yet still have that transfer of energy all the way down, unlike steps. I understand the steps because you just pull it to a certain spot, and then you pull it to a certain spot, and you pull it to a certain spot. That rifle thing just absolutely, I don't know. And when you consider that they started out in an 1880s bicycle shop,
yeah,
and now they're in a high tech environment like True Temper, it's just crazy the differences you can get into.
Well, True Temper was American Fork and Hoe.
Yeah, we can buy a wheelbarrow that says True Temper on the side right now.
You can. It's that division of the company was sold many, many, many years ago. We still get some warranty calls on wheelbarrows, and but that's not part of our company anymore. But that's how far back, True Temper goes. And you're right, Royal Precision goes way back. No, most stepless shafts start as step shafts, and we pull the steps out. So certainly the process starts off very similar. But a stepless shaft tends to have a different feel to it. The energy transfer is different for whatever reason. Well, a stepless shaft tends to feel harsher, but that feels more stable to people with sort of a lot of people. A step shaft tends to have a bit of shock dampening to it, and that's because every time you have a reduction in diameter, you tend to have a bit of a stress riser, and so it tends to feel smoother with a step shaft. And that's a good thing too. It depends on the type of player you are, the type of swing you have. You're going to like a different feel.
I was always a liker of the original rifle. The very first one.
It's a great
shaft. Very first one. I was back in this state, I'm the only advanced certified rifle guy.
There you go.
To this day. And man, love that thing. And they're hard to find now.
I started my career with Royal Precision, so it's music to my ears to hear that.
There you go. It was super nice. It really, really was. All righty. Jim Anderson, he is from Scotland.
Wow.
Bit of a mild day in Dysart, East Central Scotland. Hope things are good. What about Scotty Scheffler? Putting display awesome to win the... Yeah, right? And so the dude won, and so the guy won after he changed into a mallet putter.
Mm-hmm.
He went into a Spider Tour X putter, whatever that means. And the stat that they were throwing all over the radio was he made every putt that was 15 foot or inside of it. Every one. Like, well, when you're going to do that, you're going to do all right, considering how well he hits the ball.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Peter's back. No golf here on Saturday, but was able to post my first win of the year. Nicely done, sir. Yeah, he was throwing it around pretty good, too. We went and played with him. So, Peter, you'll be happy to know that when Bob and I played at Gulf Shores, he took 4 out of the 5 on there, and in typical fashion, I would have him by 3 or 4 strokes, and then in one hole, all the wheels and axles would fall completely off, and I would shoot a triple or a quad, and he would hit a par, and next thing you know, he's winning. So, and I could not find anything but the front of the green for some reason. I just could not hit it past some mental block going to the front of the green. So, yeah, there it was. All right, Mark Nat, as a fitter, are you able to purchase just heads from OEMs? Yes, sir, I can. I am one of the lucky few, and that's based on pedigree and it's based on and amounts as well. Kid yourself not. These people, we're in the business to make money, and if you want to buy one head or two head, you won't even get a look. However, if you're serious about starting an account and you have a business license and and some people were required to have a brick and mortar, meaning a store like this, okay, in order to make that go, and that's allowed me to have these relationships with these other folks like the Mizunos. I'm like one of 19 in the world. And then you get Wilson. I'm one of few there. And when we went to a Strixon and we restarted, they didn't cancel my account. And when they saw my number, that I kind of got a stuttering from the person because they'd never seen a number that low before in the account. So, and can I do it with Callaway? Yes. Can I do it with TaylorMade? Yes. I just choose not to because I'm more apt to understand the differences and what the club heads will do with these shafts in combination, right? And just for the matter, like right over here, the VRTX shafts, and I have found that those blues work in my Mizunos like nobody's business, and they are friggin' machines, right? And that's the way it's going to go. So, can you? The answer is yes. But when you get ready to enter those conversations, you better be ready to represent and not only yourself but that company as well. All righty. Charlie, what do you say, bud? How about some photo? Well, I put that video out there for you, and you saw this is empty. That was that Peerless. Good stuff. I was really kind of shocked. I went looking for some scotch, but the offerings were just not there. So I ended up going with that.
I saw some bourbon in your pictures.
Oh, heck yeah. The that Bourbon Barrel company was a shock. It was extraordinarily smooth. I didn't expect it, but I saw on a couple of YouTube videos where these guys were talking about it. I said, yeah, they'll be there. So there we go. Oh, Doug Mail. Dougie's on here. How do we get a live chat with Gavin Robertson of Acra Golf? I don't know if you've met him.
Yeah, it'd be great to talk with him.
Yeah, he's an old IC.
Sure, I remember Doug.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, he's on here. All righty. Matt, decent considering I haven't played much as of late. Mm-hmm. So Charlie and Matt, so we go to the Brett. Matt likes to play in, I don't know if he'd be like a perfect Canadian or not. The dude's like 6'6" and loves playing in the cold. Just absolutely loves playing in the cold. I'm like, oh. I don't know how he does it, but he loves it. All right, David Jones, he's from Pennsylvania. Scotty was putting. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, that was me. That was a rookie move on my part, buddy. You should have seen it. I had the most perfect intro going on, the whole 9 yards, only for Robin to come in and tell me that, hey, bonehead, you're not broadcasting. I'm like, oh, here we go. So we had to kind of start it early. We got Phil K in Austin. Played at Tucson last week in the rain and the sleet. One day, beautiful the next. Why do the Arizona Munis have better grass fairway than Austin? I don't know, brother. Oh, you can embarrass those. What you do is you embarrass those superintendents, and maybe they pick up the pace on that a little bit. All right, here we go. Travis K. I believe that's Jersey. Do you ever get a grip that won't stick in a small spot? Had a few of those lately. Absolutely. Now it's far and few between, but I find those on the we'll call the CP2s there that they've got with the little, and sometimes those they got that extra what they call the core that sticks on there, and every once in a while, just on the other side of that core, it gets slippery. What you got to do is you got to puncture it, and you puncture that grip, and what that is, it's an air bubble. and you puncture with just the smallest little bit of a needle, and it'll ooze, and it gets hard as a rock right after that. Alrighty. And there's Michael, old school, separate the men from the boys. So I haven't said this. I haven't been able to brag on Gavin a bit, but Gavin can golf the ball. All right. He can golf the ball. What are you playing to right now?
Like about 1.1. I just played a member guest last week. I was at 1.1.
Nice. That is so awesome. So do you get a chance to really practice a lot, or is that just natural talent?
I got into senior golf the last few years. I've been playing a lot of tournaments the last few years. It's been fun. Yeah. I practice a fair bit.
Nice.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Kind of got back into it after a lot of years of not playing much competitive golf.
Well, you got to go in order to go low. You got to practice. I mean, you can't unless you're just extraordinarily talented. Okay.
I'm not that.
Yeah. What was the diner you took the photos of, Charlie? That was called the Sunliner Diner, and there's a handful of them around the U.S. And it goes with a 50s theme, and there'll be like I Love Lucy or Disney or something like that in there, and they all show up when they got the paper hats on, and they wear the full attire for the 50s stuff, and the food there is actually very, very good. They serve breakfast, lunch, dinner, the whole 9 yards. All righty, now they're hearing me. You gotta love technology, no doubt. Here's Krister from Sweden. Krister's got some game too. I've watched him. Gavin, you ever seen that putting device, that training that's called the putt out, where you putt it and you putt it and there's a hole. It looks like a banana, and there's
yeah.
The guys from the UK have got it.
Yep.
And I have seen guys just absolutely get frustrated beyond all belief about not being able to land that ball in the hole, right? And it's all about freaking tempo, right?
Tempo, yeah. Jeff has one in his office right next to me here.
Yeah. So Krister's on he's on Instagram and hitting like 4 or 5 in a row. And and not only the yes putter, but he acquired this old ping putter that he refurbished a little bit. And I watched him do it. He did 4 or 5 of those damn things. And I'm like, really?
That's impressive.
No doubt. All righty. Any new clubs? Because he, as we like to affectionately call him, he's a club hoe. He goes through, but he gets fit, though. I will say that. He says, no, left my clubs at my builders. Changed the shaft. He's into PX 6.0 rifles, into C-Taper Light 115Xs. The builder tried to change the shaft in the Ping Pal. There you go. Mm-hmm. All right. Al's from down in Florida. Okay, now they can hear you. They're talking about this is later down here. Michael, he's from Montreal.
Hey, Michael.
There we go.
That's about 2 hours east of here.
Okay. And he did get a sight of the Dyna Powers, but the swing weights are so heavy, I have a hard time getting the ball through the air.
Oh, no.
A little bit. So Wilson's new Dyna Power, we call them the Dyna Forged. They came out with they replaced the D9 Forged, and they did slight improvements like everybody does. And it's a forged face and a slightly narrower sole, and it's a good-looking club. I got them over here. The thing that's probably in your wheelhouse is their new CB, is what they're calling them. That thing is sweet. And it's easy to bend in the whole 9 yards.
I love the Wilson stuff. I think it's a very underrated company, let me tell you. Makes some really good stuff.
Oh, here we go. Club better had no luck removing the putter shaft. We'll try tomorrow. I guess there is a bearing. Yes, there is. I was going to tell you that. There is a bearing in the bottom, because he's got a BB60. And it is. It's a there. So, Krister, one of the ways, there's 1 of 2 ways of really removing this thing. The first one, which I've never ever in my day had luck with, is I've had guys tell me to put it in a freezer and leave it there overnight, and then come out there, hit it with some heat on the outside really quick, and then pop it while the bearing was smaller so that it would pop out. I have never ever had that work. And however, what I have had work 100% of the time is underneath the hosel, you got to drill a small hole in the bottom of the hosel big enough to accept a punch. And you put this thing and you put your putter to allow it to go through a piece of wood. I've got a 1x1 with a hole that accepts that exact thing. And you put it in there and you set it in there. And then what you do is you prop it up and you run this punch until you pop it out. And you'll know it pops out because it'll run right out of the shaft and run right onto the floor. And then once that's done, easy peasy, it comes apart. Now, when you go to put it back together, what you do is you just take a piece to prevent any condensation and stuff like getting in there. You just take a piece of epoxy and just smooth it out across the bottom, and you're good to go. Now, for a beryllium copper putter, it's going to look in there, but in a silver one, you can take a silver Sharpie and cut it and cover it up, and you're good to go. All righty. Oh, here we go. I'm currently using the Aerotech 190 or I-95 stiff and thinking about going to 115 regulars in my irons, but cannot find it in the text. My driver speed's 153. Any suggestions?
Well, I mean, you can go up in weights. There's several different weights above 95 in the steel fibers. So I mean, and the good thing is, I mean, you can. I'm not sure. I guess the thought process here is goes heavier and softer, which makes some sense. I mean, you can stay the same flex. Certainly in the heavier weights, there's a stiff flex also. I mean, I don't mind. I don't know. Your driver speed's 100. It's pretty good speed for an R-Flex. I'd probably, if you like the I-95s and stiff, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just stay in stiff. Although I guess 53. I don't know. You've got 100-mile-an-hour club head speed. That's pretty good. I'd probably stay with the stiff flex and the 115 if you want to go heavier.
There you go. So the only reason why I would see because I don't my experience with Aerotech is very, very limited, but I would say that the more graphite that you're putting on there, the regular is going to play probably a little bit more because there's more graphite on there.
Well, I mean, what I find two things. One, as you get heavier with graphite, it dampens the feel. The only reason tour players right now are not using graphite in their iron shafts at a greater rate is that all of them grew up with steel shafts, and there's a certain feel that a 130 gram or 125 gram shaft has with a thin steel wall. As soon as you try to put enough graphite to have a 120, 130 gram shaft, the wall is so thick it dampens the shock or dampens the vibrations. So it's a totally different feel. And so tour players just aren't used to the feel of a graphite shaft with that thick graphite wall that dampens the shock, the feel. Otherwise, performance wise, any graphite shaft can certainly match up to a steel, but steel has a certain feel that tour players like. And there's a huge benefit to that. And that's why steel shafts are so popular with tour players. So when you go from 95 grams to 115 grams, you're also going to have more material, which will dampen the feel a little bit, which will make it actually feel maybe even a little smoother for you. Aerotech tends to play stiff. So the stiff in an I-95 is pretty stout. The 115 might feel a little smoother because it's a thicker wall. It shouldn't play any stiffer. I mean, best thing is go see a club fitter and try them both. I mean, try it. That's what I would say. Test it out first, because I don't think you need to go softer unless you just feel that you need something a little smoother. That's the only thing I would say.
The other thing you could do, Stephen, is you could do one thing, and you could maybe. And it depends on the kind of irons and what you're getting there, but maybe you could even consider hard stepping and go one up, and then you get all the same, because at 100, you're kind of depending on, of course, there's all kinds of things that go into it with how you take it back, how you pull it down, how you release it through, all those different things. But at 100, you're basically like at the beginning of the stiff range, depending on the shaft and the profile and all that other stuff. So if you're going to the 115 and the regulars, like Gavin said, is probably going to feel. It probably may even feel, because of it's smoother, it might actually feel stiffer. But what you might want to do is take that and just hard step it one,
I love
and
that.
then you probably get the best of both worlds right there.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
All right. Charlie, what kind of shaft are you replacing with it? So what, if you, I can't zoom in on it, but like right here, you see some green ones, and then they're all black ones, and then some colors, and then black, and then some colors again. What that is, Charlie, is the FX are being replaced by the GX. So they're just moving up. They're just moving up one in the alphabet.
Exactly.
and and although I can tell you that, and it's weird. I've always absolutely reduced guys to rubble that go, hey, this is more flexible. When they're doing it like this, absolutely reduce them to rubble. But there is, I gotta say, well, even on the red ones, because these are the guys that, just like Gavin said, these are stout, right? And the ones that are in the FX line versus this one, these just the feel, the vibe of what's coming off of them is way smoother. So we're certain to see an improvement, to be sure. All righty. Krister says after he resafts his clubs, he'll be at a half-inch longer than standard, so he can stand up more at his posture. His setup, the swing weight be D4, D5. Yeah, well, in the way, so Krister, I've seen that you swing, and you are kind of a very tall, but you're still very up and down with those lessons that you've been taking. Maybe when you're flattening it out a little bit, you can afford to go a little bit lower or a little bit flatter. And when you do that, you want to watch your lie angles. All right, Steven says, Charles, I was looking at the Aerotech but cannot find them and was wondering if Acra had any suggestions. Oh.
I was looking at Aerotech, cannot find it. What do you mean you can't find Aerotech, I wonder?
The 115s maybe? And regular?
Okay. We do make a 115. I think we make it regular. To check that.
Well, it might be just where he's going to go get them, because not everybody carries every SKU.
Yeah.
So Stephen, the best case scenario is they are out there.
Check on if you go to truetempersports.com. Check if there's an Aerotech section. You go in the irons. There's an Aerotech section in there, a steel fiber section. It has all the SKUs. I could be wrong too. I'm trying to remember if we have a 115 R Flex. We may not have the R Flex in a 115. Maybe only S and X.
So if they only have a 115,
you can go soft step it.
Oh, there you go. You can go the other way and soft step it. That's the good way of doing it. Krister says he's gonna put a standard ping shaft. Well, he's gonna leave the standard ping shaft to an Apollo matte black and put a Garson grip on it. He's customizing his old putter.
Nice.
Okay. All right. We Are All One says, did you try Golf Works? That's also another good place to try it.
Yep.
All right, Bartholomew, should work well in my irons. I have tested a 7-iron, had a good session. Nice. Yes, We Are All One but they are out of them. Oh,
there you go.
Availability. Okay. And then Charlie's recommending maybe the True Temper DG Mid 115.
DG Mid 115 is an awesome shaft. Actually, we're gonna be coming out with a tour issue version of that too. There's an inside scoop for you. Awesome shaft. It's gonna play a lot different. If they already like the Aerotech, the DG Mid's gonna be a different feel altogether. But certainly a very cool shaft, the mid launch.
Okay. We Are All One says howdy. Well, hello back to you. I have a YouTube video where I hit the C-Taper Light 115X. All right, we'll have to see that one.
There you go.
And he says, not steel, but graphite. No problem. So the thing about graphite, also, the thing I tell people when we're talking about graphite is a massive shock absorber.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, if you get the hands were starting to get a little bit numb, Arthur's starting to climb in, or, you're not finding the face necessarily all the time, chances are the graphite might be the way to go, because I'm here to tell you There are far, far, far more choices in graphite than there ever will be for steel. And in order to get out there and find what works for you.
That the steel fiber is kind of neat because it kind of bridges the gap a little bit between steel and graphite in that it's a graphite core. I mean, I consider it a graphite shaft still, but it's a graphite core. Then it's literally 52 miles of steel fiber. It's like the size of your hair, wrapped around the shaft. And so what it does is actually moves the weight to the outside. So the MOI, the shaft, the weight is on the outside. It's kind of a neat feel. It's a different feel than other graphite iron shafts. But certainly it's a good tweener between graphite and steel.
There you go. Jim Anderson is saying hello to Jim and Robin. Krister is like he's in the GC quad when I was shaft fitting. My club head speed of 7 iron was 95, 96.
Wow. That's good speed.
Not bad. John Lamb, he's talking about, yep, there is that ball bearing. They froze and shrink and drop into it. Punch it out. That's the way it is. There we go. It says between stiff and regular, I can't find anything. I must stay with what I have. I may just stay with what you have. So, Stephen, like Gavin was telling us, that swing speed is not the only attribute that you got to look at when selecting a shaft. When we got long drive contest guys that are 6'6", built like a linebacker for the NFL, swinging 140 mile an hour, swinging an M0 shaft in order to bring the thing around and hitting the damn thing out, 380, almost 400 yards, that ought to tell us a little something that's going on. Now, it's a different game. Hitting it in the grid once out every 6 shots is a little different than going out and playing and trying to score low. Granted. But what we're saying is that profile, weight, flex comes into play, but total weight, it becomes extraordinarily important.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've gone to one of those, one of the things that's out there is, and I don't know if I'm a fan just yet, but I will say if you can find somebody with one of those Mizuno optimizers, or even that Wilson's got that new gizmo that's come out, and I'm looking right at it. I got a box and it's right in there and I haven't opened it up yet. That and swing and see what they offer for you. And then you might be able to make a determination or an equivalent from there. Dave Bedford, just able to say, hey, Gwen, and your shafts put in my iron wedges and I have to wait for the snow to disappear.
Hi, Dave.
All righty. All right, we're on one. Finally, I like a color I like that matches and flex profiles, so I need the green GX. It's funny that you say that, because I know more than was talking with these guys, and they were telling me about the change, and I got a call from a guy in Kansas, and he's 72. He's 72, and he says he's still swinging in the mid-90s.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's like, and I need this and I need that, and what can you do? Because he had fairway woods and he wanted them all to feel the same. And I said, well, just so happens we got these new GXs, and they're green, and it's just I'm going to cut it right in the middle, because he says maybe not too high, not too low. I said, great, green. And I said, green. He says, oh, I love green. I said, well, then you're going to love this, because now I got fairway woods. And he says, got it. And next thing you know, so within a couple of days, I get these brand new stealths on my doorstep to reshaft into these green shafts. So I got all this red on this shaft and this green. This is a Christmas club,
Christmas
yeah. And but they look cool, I got to admit. So we're waiting to see what the final verdict was. All right. John Lamb's talking to Steve and says, find a fitter might be able to set you up with a harder soft step shaft. There you go. Well, that's what we've been talking about.
Yep.
All right. Michael up there says, Jim, a question on a T-made. Had you see the Q10 and another driver hit, and you said the head twisting at impact, wouldn't it be the shaft's fault instead of the head? Oh, okay. That's a good question. So when you see, basically, he was asking, Gavin, is if you see these Um, you know, when you see those slow motion hits of a
Sure.
driver, and the thing goes, and so is that head or is that shaft or both?
Combination of both. I mean, obviously, the MOI of heads is now being maxed out. You've heard the 10K heads, which is basically maxed out the MOI by the USGA standards. But no matter what, if you hit the ball off the toe, there's going to be twisting. The shaft, obviously, you have to remember having low torque also can be a detriment depending on your swing speed. The lower your swing speed, you actually want some torque to kick the ball up in the air and get it going when you miss hit it a little bit. So the harder you swing, the lower the torque, yes, will keep the head from turning that much and keep the ball on line a little bit. And that's where low torque does help with the very fast swing speeds. But for the average golfer, you actually want a little bit of torque. So, but yes, I mean, you're seeing when the club head twists, that's the torque of the shaft and the resistance to twisting from the MOI of the head.
There you go. Where you hit it on the face actually will do it too, right?
Sure.
You throw one on the toe, it's going to look awful.
Yeah.
You throw one on the heel, and it's going to go the other way on you.
Sure.
All right, here's one. Bill Nauman took the Black Ops Driver Challenge and was 20 yards longer because he picked up 10 mile an hour swing speed. Wow.
I'm not sure. First of all, I don't think a driver can get you more swing speed itself. It might have been a combination of the shaft and the length of the shaft and some kind of a combination of a bunch of things. I've been trying a Black Ops driver. It is pretty damn good.
Is it nice?
What's that?
Is it nice?
Yeah, it is pretty good. I think a lot of the new drivers are good this year. This year, I think, is the year of the drivers. This year there actually is a pretty big. I think all the companies have kind of up their game a lot this year for some reason at a higher level than normal. I'm not sure if a driver can get you more swing speed necessarily, unless you went to a much lighter shaft for some reason, or maybe a longer shaft than you used to, or something.
You know, there was a thing there where Callaway was talking about aerodynamics of the golf club head, because they were like, it wasn't Boeing, but it was another aircraft company that they were with, and they helped design this thing. And I saw a 3 mile an hour increase in speed.
Wow.
Across the board. Yeah, that's quite a bit. And but it also has to translate into a good quality of hit.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that did not happen. But hey, dude, if you got it and you got it out there and you're throwing it in the middle, dude, more power to you. That's awesome.
I think sometimes there's a lot of talk about what a shaft actually does. And I mean, a shaft helps, in your swing, deliver the club head to the ball. And to your point, I mean, a solid strike is more important than anything else when it comes to distance and accuracy. And finding the right profile shaft that you get that center strike more often with a square club face is going to give you more benefit than anything else. And that's where that fitting really is so important, is finding that combination of, weight, flex, profile, all these things.
Yep. And the cool part about it is that what I tell the folks here is the shaft is the transmission. It's not the engine. You're the engine.
Yep.
And it's your job to transmit that energy down to the ball, and that's what the shaft does. You're going to like this one. There's Doug. Says die matching is one of the best things that has ever been done to golf shaft design and manufacturing.
Thank you, Doug.
If you're looking for a fight, brother, you got to go somewhere else. Well
Appreciate that one.
All right, John Lamb, swing it up is probably the ball in the hosel. I had to drill it out and punch it with an old ping pal and ran a weld over the hole. You can do that too.
That's a good way.
It's got a little grinding. Now you got to be careful. Beryllium copper, and you get beryllium in the air, and beryllium in the air is not good. All right, it's very equivalent to asbestos in the air. In fact, they call it beryliosis, and you want to be careful about that. Now, even a little bit. So if you're going to grind on this thing, wear a mask so that you don't inhale any of this stuff. All right. Charlie wants to know what he was using. Here we go. An AD-UB5R. Holy moly, Bill. The UB is a friggin' rod. All right. Well, that's cool. That's just what we're talking about right there, right? The guys, little stiffer because the AD is a very, very stout profile.
Sure.
And the 50R. So very cool. Neotac. Okay. My swing speed average is 91. All right. Well, that's what is the golf industry, that's about average anymore?
Yeah.
99.5.
Around there. Yep.
Yeah. And that is a good shaft. Yes, it is. Driver swing speed from 88 to 92. Yep.
Yep.
And then they asked him if he bought the driver, and he said, Bill says, needless to say, I didn't win the $100. And then he says, like, well, I'm not paying $800 for a driver either. Well, but then again, maybe. Very good. There's that. I have to go with 50 more yards in order to get that kind of money. Yeah. All righty. So Neotech says his swing speed is in that 91. I hit the ball average 185 to 215, 66 years of age. Which shaft would you recommend?
Boy, yeah. There's just, it depends on your swing. There's so many variables in your swing, though. That, I mean, the speed is great, but I mean, understanding how you release the club and tempo and stuff like that is so much more to it.
Yeah. So Neotech, for one thing, here is just kind of, when I see these kinds of things, I immediately go into math.
Yeah.
And the old timies, what we did in the day was it was 2.5 yards per mile per hour for a driver. All right. So if we did the easy math and did it at 90, that'd be 180 plus another 35. So you're talking about 2.25, 2.25 on a perfect strike, right? 2.25, 230 on a perfect strike. In today's world, that would be easily to get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at 215, that means you're missing the ball. That means you're missing the club. Missing the ball on the club, missing the ball on the club, club on the ball. Whatever which way, you're missing the shot. And to me, when I see that, is if the best way to get an instant fix on being able better quality of hit is the length of the club, right? The length of the club. Now, I'm sure that it's changed, but the last couple of times I've been on tour trailers, nobody ever hit a stock length shaft. Everything was a little shorter. Yep. And it's because those guys could find the middle of the ball or middle of club face, and that quality of hit, like Gavin was talking about, was paramount, right? Paramount to getting that ball as far as you possibly could. So what I would suggest before going to switch is maybe choke down 3/4 of an inch if you got a standard length driver, and go from there. Okay. So just to kind of prove my point, when I did fittings one year, I did 700 fittings, and I had a guy in here that was from the NBA. It was nearly 7 foot tall, and I had a little girl in here that was nearly 4 foot tall, and everybody in between. And universally across the board, 44.5 inches won the day. All right. And then I turned around, I called some of my buddies back on the tour, and I said, hey, what are you guys doing? And 44.5, 44.75 was all the rage, right? They were trying the 45.5, and yes, they were hitting it further, but they were hitting it further into the trees. And when you're trying to go low, that does not work. And so they went back. And now, we got driver swing speeds that are going higher, things like that. But when you're talking about getting a good quality shot, length of the driver is normally the number one culprit for that.
Sure. My personal note, I just went to a 44-inch driver, gained a couple miles an hour club head speed, plus hit it more solid, and actually gained distance all around going to a 44-inch driver. That's what Sergio Garcia did a number of years to go to gain distance. Some people gain with shorter. A lot of people gain with longer shafts too, but a lot of people gain with shorter shafts.
Right.
Speed.
All right. The Bill says a great experience. Anyone can take the challenge. Cool. Then maybe I will not replace my shaft and just cut it to the right length and putt the grip. Well, maybe you might. There's Robin talking to everybody, telling every hit that thumbs up button. All right. There we go. John says you could save a lot of fooling around with it unless you, after putting with a special shaft, check out swing weight first before you cut it. Yeah. Feel is important when it comes to a putter. I wouldn't necessarily worry about the swing weight, but just the feel of it.
Agree
You
with
can
that.
fake it with a little bit of weight in the back. I just want to replace it with a black shaft to get to pop out. And I did. You did a good job cleaning it up, Krister. I saw it. It was very, very smooth. It looked very, very good. You know, back in the day, that was when Ping. Well, even today, do they even mill a face? They had that stone milled or that stone finish where it looked like lots of little
Yeah.
peck marks on there, and it was very, very smooth. He smoothed that one right out. They make shrink wrap sleeves that you can put on over the shaft that look, I don't know when they stand up though. Swing it. All right. They do make shrink wrap sleeves that you can put over the shaft for that look. Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yep. And they do. And they make them so they go over the head of the club now, too.
Really?
Yeah. And the craziest designs you ever wanted to see. There's Doug back in there. If a golfer fit well into an 80 to 85 gram graphite iron shaft, I also like to fit them into a 90 to 100 foot composite wedge shaft.
Perfect.
I would agree, except their gap wedge, which is used for the full swings. We're right on target there, Doug. You know, if the gap wedge is pretty much the last full swing club in the bag for most people, and I tend to put the full swing shaft in there, and then we go into the wedges after that. Now, again, in a lot of cases, you know, a lot of these irons nowadays are coming with gap wedges in them, and I would recommend highly going with that, particularly if you're going to use them for more full swing and less finesse shots, because get all the advantages you can, right? Get all the advantages you can. Now, if you're a player like Gavin and wedge shots are at a high premium, that maybe the precision is a little bit more with a wedge than it would be a standard gap wedge. All right, here we go. Seymour, do you have any recommendations in turning my 4-iron 20-degree Callaway Rogue original into a driving iron? I have considered putting a graphite shaft in. Of course, this is all experimental for me.
Just careful with swing weight, I guess, if you go to a lighter weight shaft. But I mean,
yeah, again, like Gavin was telling, is that there are like hybrid and or driving iron shafts that are out there. And if they're lighter than what's currently in your club, that could possibly help. But if you're talking about, you know, a lot of these driving irons that you see out there are radically different in their design. They have a huge sole on the bottom so they can get a little bit more air and they can get up in the air. And that's when those shafts for those particular kind of clubs really start working. What you could probably do is, you know, again, something a little bit lighter, maybe just a touch more flexible so you can get the ball snapping in there in order to get the ball up in the air, and then you would go with something like that. All righty. Up, here we go. Are the Acra GX and putter shafts available to purchase?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Now I've been asked before, and I tell them that because of our agreement that I've got to put it in something or an adapter on it or something like that.
Yeah, so across the board, Acra, basically you have to purchase it assembled in a club.
There you go. There we go. Krister's going to ask, what Acra driver shaft if I want a lively but stable shaft? Well, that sounds like that like that Shogun you were just talking about.
Well, yeah, that's an extreme. Certainly, I would again, not knowing your swing at all, I would say try TZ6 is one of the coolest designs we've ever had. Like I said, it's very, very stable in the butt section, so it feels stable. It's also got a incredibly low torque, about the same torque as steel. So it feels stable, but the actual tip flex or tip deflection on it is very soft for a tour quality shaft. So you get talking about your lively, really neat shaft. So I would say look at that for sure. But like I said, keep an open mind and try. We do make some, like I said, softer shafts with fairly low torque for stability.
There you go. Look at here. We got another one. John Lamb. He's got an Acra 125 wedge.
Love it.
And in his Odyssey. Okay,
Huh?
works very well for me. I wish they made a 105 iron shaft in matte black still. There, that's what you call a tinkerer right there, man.
No kidding. No kidding. That's cool.
Yeah. Here's another one. Doug wants to know which Acra putter shaft is offered in the lab putters.
It's actually it's a proprietary shaft we do for lab. I will say it's similar to the FXP 400 series that you have there in the fact that they're both very, very stable and stiff. The lab putter shaft is a little longer and has there's a few different changes to it, more with parallel sections. But it's something we designed with and for them. But yeah, it's a very stable shaft.
Okay. So just so you know, Krister's got a 115 to 116 driver speed.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and the funny part is he's actually very smooth with it too. He used to have this little hitch that came over the top, but he's been seeing an instructor and it's starting to smooth out a little bit. He's one of those guys when you see it that generates all this swing speed, but doesn't look like it's going fast.
Yeah.
That's one of those.
I would definitely say try the TZ6. That sounds like a perfect thing for you. That or probably just because you're so smooth. I would say when we come up with this new Shogun, try the new Shogun green. Probably would be a good one for you. It's going to be kind of a softer butt, but very stable tip section. But it'll feel lively.
Cool. Doug said you had a great explanation. John Lamb said you had great success with the old TZ line. There is a high launch, low launch model. I think they labeled 5s and 6s. Yep.
Yes, sir.
I remember that. I still got it. I bet I do. Remember the lime green ones you guys put out?
Oh boy, that's a long time ago. Yeah, they're crazy. Yeah, they're cool.
I still got that, and it one of the best driver shafts I've had.
Well, the TZ line was the Tour Z line, and we had numerous different Tour Z lines for a number of years. Then TZ 5 and 6 came out 5 years ago, I guess, and it was TZ 5, the number 5 and number 6, and then I guess last year we came out with the newest version of it, which is TZ FIVE and TZ SIX. That's the PVD version that's out there now. But yeah, always updating, always looking at ways we can make it better.
I like that PVD finish. When he's talking about that, it means it looks like a steel shaft.
Yeah.
And what I do in fittings when I'm doing irons, I'll throw one of those and I'll pull it down and I'll put it in there and I said, "Here you go." And he's like, "Oh, I got to have iron shafts." All right, here you go. And man, this thing feels great. I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad you like it. It's graphite." What? And it's fun. I think we all got a story like that.
Sure. Well, the TZI iron shafts are the same way, right? That PVD finish. Yeah.
All right. Brandon W says he was fitted into a Venice Blue 6S. What would be a comparable Acra shaft?
Probably the GX green. Would be pretty darn close. I would say TZ5, maybe a flex softer though. Probably be pretty close. We also have a shaft right now called the RPG high balance point HBP. It's kind of being phased out, really close to the Venice Blue. But that would be another one that's pretty close. I would say the new GX green, it would be really close for you.
There you go.
The 60 gram S Flex M4.
Michael Moody says, very interesting explanation, Gavin. Thanks a lot. First time someone explained that. Well, there you go. We're breaking all kinds of barriers. Doug says, and a stronger shaft. Yeah.
Yep.
And we are one loves hearing the techie side of it. Well, you came to the right place, man. I'm a nerd of the highest caliber. So, all right. Doug Mail, Torre is the gold platinum standard for graphite pre-preg. That's what he says.
It is.
Yep. And is that spelled right? Is it 2 R's or is it 1 R?
No, 1 R.
Okay.
Doug knows his stuff.
Yes, he does. PZ, he's out of Wisconsin. Sorry he's late with the shop. My client was picking up his lab putter with an Acra shaft. Look at that. Well done. All right.
That's
Hello,
great.
Keith. And had a client ask me if Acra shafts can be pured flowed. I said Acras are very stable on every plane, but I'm a head case, so you do anyhow. Good call, man. If you do it the same way every time, you can't ever look at somebody in the eye and say you didn't do it.
Exactly.
All right. Very good point. Gwaine, need to play a tip stiff shaft in lower lofted drivers because that's what you said. Doug is being a card right now. Well done, buddy. Patrick Young says, thanks, Gavin. That was great. Good deal. Glad you like it. John's back says, you can do it with 1 or 2 irons at a time. I use my 5 and 6 to try different shaft profiles and feels what good. Yeah, what they do good.
Yeah, it's good. Good way of doing it.
Hey, do you I don't it's probably more in Lee's ballpark, but you remember Scott Gorley?
Very well.
Yeah.
I know Scott very well.
I like what he's doing over there. And we're talking about those fittings of the different irons. You know, he does like a 4 or 5, and then does a 7, does get down to the pitching wedge.
4-7 wedge, I think it is, something like that.
Yeah. And I asked him point blank, I said, are you finding yourself putting different shafts in these things? And he says, more often than not. And I'm like, really? In order to get the same everything you want? He says, oh, yeah. And of course, you got to get real close to him to listen to him talk because he's the soft-spoken Scotsman that he is.
He has a very strong Scottish accent too.
Yes,
I love Scott. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We don't. So AMT is a great line of shafts. We don't sell many to club fitters. You see it in Titleist all the time and things like that. But AMT is a ascending mass. So basically, your wedges are heavier. Your 4-iron, 5-iron is lighter. The problem is when you most fitting studios, like across the board, use 6 or 7 irons as their fitting tool. Well, it's hard to fit somebody in an AMT because you don't want to fit somebody into a 6-iron knowing that the longer irons are going to be lighter and the short iron going to be heavier. So it's just a hard fit. The way Scott does it, you actually could fit with something like that, or you could play around with a lighter weight long iron and a little bit heavier short iron, which is not a bad idea for a lot of people.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Steven says that's what I was planning to do with a spare 6-iron. There you go. Some LP irons. Ooh wee. All right, I did, lagging by hitting that like button, boys and girls.
There you go.
Doug says I really miss Acra golf days and playing with a foursome, aka with McGolf.
Love it.
It's always a lot of fun. It is funny to talk to these guys, and it's fun to see. I feel like a grandpa every once in a while when I get out there with these guys.
We'll be doing it again next year. Doug, give us a call, and we'll get you, and we'll put the old group back together.
No doubt. Well done. All right, B says, Will Zal and the others are going back to sub 45 shafts. How can I go shorter but keep up my ball speed? Well, so here's the thing. Just like Gavin was saying, that when he went shorter, his quality of hit went up.
Ball speed.
When your quality of hit goes up, so does your ball speed. I cannot emphasize enough what they call it smash factor, right? And that is the ratio between club head speed and ball speed. And I'm here to tell you, you can mathematically calculate it out that if you were to cut off a 1/2 of an inch or even an inch off of a driver and say, okay, for every inch is so many miles per hour. Okay. And if you're hitting it poorly at 40, let's just say 45, and then I cut off a 1/2 of an inch, and all of a sudden, instead of hitting it better, the quality of hit would far overrun that 1 or 2 mile an hour that you would get from the added length. Far exceed it. And the material, right? This is back when you had wood woods and steel woods and titanium woods, and they're out there. Now that's kind of gone by the wayside, but to kind of make the point. So the more that you can find the center of that club, the better off you will be. Far and away.
100%.
All right. Love the info on the golf shafts. Definitely to be trying Acra shafts this year. There he is. What do you say, buddy? He's another Irishman. He's out there. Yeah, he's been doing Strixons here as of late.
Okay.
All right.
It's a great
Doug
picture.
Mallard says, "Yep, I had no more brick and mortar shop. I lost my Mizuno and Ping accounts." There you go.
Ugh.
You know, Ping, I tried hitting them up with heads. They did not want to hear it. They tried to tell me that they couldn't figure out how to get them to me with the right numbers on them. And I said, "You're a bunch of freaking engineers and you can't figure that out? Maybe I ought to come down there." All right. This is Doug says, "I've played on the Winter Golf Tour with about 120 golfers, including about 40 PGA pros for 8 years." Well, Doug's playing in tall cotton here, man. He's playing tough. He's going to show us all up when he shows back up. All right. Neotech says, "Great show. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it." Well, Gavin brings a whole lot to the stage here, don't he?
Good to
All
hear.
right. We play in rain, sleet, snow, and frozen turf. Well, you need Matt to show up there. That man will be up there. He's won several events over the fuse, mostly senior division. Well, look at that. Man, now you're giving strokes, bud. That's all there is to it. You're giving strokes.
We all get and play.
Oh, here we go. Getting steel fibers in the new ZX5s that he's got, 95 or 110. Is there much of a difference?
Literally 15. 15 grams. That's it. There, you can get the same flex. Frequency will be the same. It depends on which weight's best for you.
There you go. So you heard it from the man. You've heard it from the man, Brendan. JJ wants to talk to you. Says, "Gwen, can you talk about wall thickness and hoop deformation in graphite shafts?"
Well, you get hoop deformation in any shaft, potentially. Yes, in some graphite shafts, you would see it some more. One thing you found over the years, we're all using materials to reduce that or increase hoop strength is what we talk about. Certainly the heavier, thicker walls are more resistant to any deformation. But I mean, you're going to get some deformation, or I mean, hoop strength can only go so far, and you're going to get some deformation in every steel or graphite shaft. It's normal. You bend a shaft, the roundness of the shaft is going to change along the length of the shaft. But it recovers. As long as it recovers back to square, that's what matters. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends. The harder you swing, the more stress you put on the shaft, the harder your transition is, the more deformation you will have. And that's why you tend to go to a stronger shaft if you swing harder or have a faster release, so that's what it kind of does. But yeah, I mean, it does add an inconsistency, and that's why most of our shafts for stronger players tend to have a lot of strength in the shaft to reduce that or add strength to the hoop strength.
Okay, there you go. So when you're talking about hoop strength, you're talking about a
Yeah.
shaft, and basically it goes like this when you swing.
Well,
And,
when
it, and
can
the
you
big
bend a
thing is
shaft
that
like
it
this,
comes
it's going to
back.
do that. When you bend a shaft, it's going to do that.
Right,
You're going to have some deformation in here.
right.
And certainly we look at recovery time in the materials we use to have the shafts recover faster, which creates more speed. Better materials get better recovery time. They also reduce any deformation. So there's different things we do in the material and the wall thickness to an extent to reduce that.
There you go. Couple more here, buddy, and then we'll call it even. There's Dave wanting to know, are you still in Kingston? He said
I
he must
am.
have put somewhere other than there.
No, I was down in Florida recently playing. But yeah, I am still in Kingston. I am here right now.
What's one of the home courses up there?
I am a member of a course called Cataraqui Golf Club. It's 107 years old. It's a wonderful old golf course.
Ooh, a lot of history.
Yeah.
All right. Chris Cliver says True Temper explains that torque really doesn't impact keeping the ball on line on off-center strikes. Ball is only on the face for a nanosecond. You feel lighter torque twist, but it's feel after impact.
I would somewhat agree with that. We do see some correlation between torque and spin rates, and that's just because obviously if the face moves a little bit, you're going to any give in the face will create some spin. Generally, torque affects feel to the golfer more than anything else. I agree with that 100%. Where we were talking a second ago, though, was that toe hit with a driver, where that's what I was saying. The MOI of the head has most importance, but the torque will have some impact on that for sure.
There you go. Doug says he's got 90-mile-an-hour clubhead speed guys and gets many of them 240. There you go. And that's what we were talking about. That's hitting the ball square on the nugget right there.
Yep.
Travis wants to know, will Acra be making putter shafts that go over the hosel?
You know what? I've actually, as you were talking, we've got some adapters we're working on right now. We're working on a couple different things to allow that to happen. We did make a putter so the original lab putter shaft had a spud, and we actually had a bigger ID, or interior diameter, to allow them to put that over top, which we could do with graphite. You just don't want the OD to get too big and look kind of silly. So yeah, it's something we can play around with for sure.
Okay. Says, I have an Acra M455 Tour Z shaft. How do I know the flex?
The M4 tells you it's a stiff flex. You know it already.
There you go. Last two. PZ says, great show as always, and thank you, Gavin, for your time.
My pleasure.
All right. Last one. Phil K, instead of cutting down a shaft, could you choke up instead? Most certainly. Right? Length is length, no matter how you square it up. I used to see things with wedges where guys would make a little bit longer wedge and then choke down on it to get different distances on there. In fact, they made longer grips so that you could choke down and not feel like you're grabbing a spaghetti noodle, in order to have these different distances for basically the same kind of swing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do that all day. All righty. So Gavin, we made it all the way down to the bottom, buddy. I appreciate it, guys from all over the world. Let's shout out to Gavin for staying around here for so long to answer questions and talk golf shafts with us. Again, if you guys get out there and you find a fitter that deals with Acra, give them a little bit of love. And now that I got my stuff, we'll be doing some testing to show how the new line works, and we'll go from there. All righty. So as always, guys, and Gavin, if you don't mind hanging out for just a second.
Sure.
As always, guys, let's see your scores. Go low.